प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्महेधि वेदस्य महाणीस्थ श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनाधीतेनाहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. May my speech be firmly established in my mind. May my mind too be firmly established in my speech. May there be perfect correspondence between my thoughts, words and deeds. May this self-effulgent truth be revealed into my consciousness. What I learn from scriptures, may that never forsake me. Let me live my life day and night according to the teachings of scriptures. I shall speak properly. I shall speak the truth. May that protect me. May that protect the teacher. Om. Peace. Peace, peace. Dear friends, let us meditate on our true self in our heart, in the form of a spark of light. Feel the spark of light in our heart. Let us concentrate on that. The sages tell us that our true nature is pure, ever perfect. Let us feel that in the form of this light and let us concentrate on that. As we concentrate on that, the light becomes bigger and brighter. I am seeing it pervading all my personality. That light is spreading everywhere. I see that spreading in this hall. Everything inside and outside is made of this light. That light alone is. There lies the oneness of our true spirit, true self. We are all essentially one. In this there is immortality. In this oneness there is the ultimate happiness and peace. In this is the ultimate truth. Let us feel that this truth has pervaded us from inside and outside, and let us meditate on that for a couple of minutes. Dear friends, as always, I am very happy to be with you in Puerto Rico, and I feel sorry that I cannot speak to you in Spanish. Maybe I will be able to learn this beautiful language after some years of try. What happens is, when I come here, I pick up a few words, but then when I go back, all forgotten, because I don't need to think in Spanish or speak in Spanish there in Providence. When I come here, then I feel, oh, I should converse with everyone in Spanish. How nice it will be, because language is a means of connecting ourselves. And we feel that sense of being connected, but language makes it functional, that we can tell our thoughts, communicate our feelings with others. And when we are studying Vedanta, when we want to practice Vedanta, that feeling of this connectedness, oneness, is very important. Central theme, in fact. One of the great principles in Vedanta is that the self is the same. The self here and the self in here, the self here, self there, they are not really different. I was just now giving this example to Mr. Rivera sitting here, that well, just as you have water in this glass and you can put water in the other glass, the glasses will be different, but the water is the same. So our bodies may be different. They are different in fact, but yet the soul in each is the same. So, this is, and that is the source of everything. Our bodies, they come and go. They are always changing. It is in fact a flux, continuous change. That is what we call the body. Continuously chemical reactions are going on, and that is what we call the body. But the self, the consciousness of I, that is always the same, and that is same in everyone. And that is why we feel love for others. Otherwise, where is the source of love? Two pieces of, say, a matter, they don't love each other. When we say that I love you, do you mean that our bones love each other? Not that the bones are loving each other. What is the source of that love? Love means oneness. You feel the sense of being one. And where is that oneness actually? That oneness actually is in the soul. The soul here and the soul there. There is no difference in them. It is one and the same. And this great principle has been the subject of all different scriptures for ages actually. Not only what is technically called Vedanta scriptures, but even if you see in the other religions, this idea is very important, that the same self dwells in everyone. And I am going to discuss one such very important themes that comes in Bible. It is in the Old Testament as well as New Testament. Jesus quotes it very often in New Testament. And this is a very important theme in practice of religion. Many times the ideas are very high, but we do not get the means to practice those. We do not know how to make them practical in life, and therefore there are many people who give up the practice of religion thinking that it is impractical. What is religion? Maybe we can read something in books, or may once in a while go in a temple or in a church and listen, think about it, or do some rituals, some worships and some rituals, that's about it. Otherwise, this idea that there is God and God is in us, it looks like impractical. In fact, we read about God, but many question, where is the existence of God? Can you prove us that God is? Can you, like other things we prove in science, can you prove the existence of God? And if not, what is the reason in accepting or believing it? You should give proof. Without proof, how can we accept the existence of God? And the reason for all these doubts is thinking of this God and religion only in terms of theory, not in terms of practice. When I practice it, I realize, experience God for myself. And thus there is no question whether God is or is not. Just as there is no question whether Naren is sitting in front of me or not. He is right there. I see him. I don't need any further proof that I have to go to laboratory and then find out some proof and then say Naren is here. No need. I experience that directly. So when I come to experience God directly, then all doubts are set aside. Then you are convinced that God is. And not only that, your life gets illuminated and it becomes filled with true joy when we realize God. So that is why we all are looking for God. And who can give us the teach us how to get there, how to get that experience? Those who have already experienced, they tell us how to go there. Like if somebody asks me how to come to Puerto Rico, I can tell because I have come many times. We were just discussing, this is my 8th visit to Puerto Rico. So, I have come many times, so I can tell people that yes, you can go to Puerto Rico, and when go there, don't miss going to all these nice beaches there, and the old San Juan that is so great to look at, so historically educative. See all those places when you go there. I can tell about Puerto Rico because I have gone there. If somebody has not gone at all, then you cannot get knowledge from that person. So similarly, those who have come face to face with God, those who have realized God, those who have actually experienced God, they can give us the knowledge as to how to do it. And one such great personality was Jesus the Christ. Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Why He is the Son of God and not all others are not Son of God or children of God? All are children of God. Why only Jesus is called then Son of God? Because He knew it, and we don't know. We feel that we are children of this man and this woman. He is my father, she is my mother, and we are children of that. We don't know that it is God who is our true Father, true Creator is God. God is the source from which we all spring. So Jesus gave therefore the truth to us, that how we also can realize this wonderful thing that we are divine. Each of us is divine. And therefore, when the question came as to what we should do, what is the means that we have of realizing this truth, he told there is one means. One means. We all have that means really, but we have to learn to use it. What is that means? Love. Love is the means to realize, experience God, because God is the source of love. As in the beginning I was telling, what does this word love mean? That feeling of being one. It is, I remember one incident that I called one friend by phone, and then his wife picked up the phone. And I said, oh, I thought that this is your husband's phone. And she said, no, it is ours. Not his, it is ours. What is the idea, that whatever belongs to your beloved, automatically you feel it belongs to me also. It doesn't belong only to that. When you love somebody, whatever belongs to somebody, that somebody belongs to you also. Out of love, that feeling of oneness comes. If you ask a child, whose is that house that you live, he will tell you, it is my house. Now he doesn't actually own it, but his father or mother own it, but he says that is my house. Why it becomes his house? Because he loves the parents, he knows that they are his. So whatever belongs to the beloved also automatically you feel belongs to you. That sense of oneness is established through love. You feel that sense, and therefore it is told in the scriptures that love thy God with all thy soul, all thy heart, all thy mind. Love God. Jesus says that this is the most important teaching. You find the same teaching in Upanishads also, most important teaching, that feel the source of love in you. It is, I will come to that a few minutes later. Jesus says, love God with all thy heart, all thy soul, all thy mind. Put all mind to God. Love God. But now you say, I don't see God. How to love God? Where is God to love? And so, the next important commandment, which Jesus says is almost as important as the first one. And what is it? Love thy neighbor as thyself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love each other. You will see this idea that at the Last Supper also, he mentions this very thing in different words, that you love each other as I have loved you. It is this love becomes the important means. When we love each other, you love your neighbor. What is the meaning of neighbor? You love your neighbor as yourself. This is a very beautiful teaching, and each word in this is very important. That love your neighbor as yourself. So who is your neighbor? If you are, say, just the house next to my house, is only that my neighbor? And beyond that, no, I don't love there. Jesus told, only love your neighbor. And so if somebody is living in the other town, is it not my neighbor? So therefore Jesus tells there the story of a good Samaritan. A great story, very beautiful story. That who is your neighbor? That who is actually caring for you, who is connected to you. And that person may be staying anywhere. Everywhere you can feel the presence of that neighbor. So that neighborliness, we have to extend that to everyone. So love the persons, because God is in them. The person is only a cover. The body is only a cover. Inside that you find that is the source of love. God that is inside, that is the source of love. It is like this, that suppose you buy a box of cookies. Now, do you love the box? Do you say that I bought the box? You say I bought cookies. I went to buy cookies. And then to eat cookies, what you have to do? You have to open the box, is it not? If you just lick the box, you won't like it. You won't get the taste. You have to open it. What is inside, that you can eat. And that is therefore the source of love. The body can be considered as box. Inside, just as an analogy, as an example, inside is God. And that is same in everyone. And therefore, that is what is making us feel the sense of love, the sense of attraction. There is otherwise no source of attraction. In body there is nothing to be attracted to each other. It is the same self that is in all. That becomes the source of attraction. Therefore, Jesus says there that love thy neighbor as thyself. And what is the meaning of thyself? As you love yourself. We all love ourselves. It is howsoever we are, we love ourselves. And whatever is mine becomes lovable to us. It is therefore important for us to say the source of love. We love, say for example, how our love functions. I love my wife, my husband, my son, my daughter, my country, my community. What is the common word there? My. So, whenever it is connected with me, I love. It is actually the source of love, therefore is I. Wherever that I gets connected, to the extent it gets connected, the love is seen there also. Like if you put sugar in something, that becomes sweet. So wherever you put I, that becomes lovable, because I is the source of love. That teaching in Upanishads is, it comes from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. That beautiful passage is there, that there is a dialogue going on between husband and wife. And the wife is asking the question that, well, I want to know about self. And the husband, who is about to go away, renounce everything and go away, he tells to the wife, oh, because of this question of yours, you have become dearer to me. Let me tell you that the source of all love, that he says, remember, no husband ever loved wife for the wife's sake, only for the sake of self that husband loved wife. No wife ever loved the husband for the husband's sake, but for the sake of the self. For the sake of self, everyone, the people loved the children. For the sake of the self, people loved their wealth, their country. Everything is loved for the self. So the self is the source of love. And therefore he says there that that should therefore be our goal. Our center of attraction must be this self. Whatever we love, we are attracted to that. It is, and it is very difficult to restrict that attraction because we love and so we want to get it. Howsoever difficult it may be, you go and get it. Let me tell you an incident about 3 years ago in near Providence. It was around this time, the very harsh winter. At that time, the temperatures were really very low, almost near zero. Snowing, a lot of big piles of snow everywhere. There was a football match, a very important football match in Foxborough's, that Gillette Stadium. And some important match. I don't understand much of football, but many people there are big fans. Do you play football here in Puerto Rico? No?
Not very much.
Soccer, yes. It is, but that football is more popular there. So, it was being thought that how many people will go to see the match in that cold, terrible conditions. There was no parking arrangement available because of the snow. there was and for the security reasons people were not allowed to take umbrellas. And so it was thought, how many people will go to see the match? They were showing one of the football fans on TV. He was being interviewed. Hey, look, this is the condition. Do you plan to go? So, yes, I am going. No question about that. I am going. And to tell you, the stadium was full in spite of such conditions. Why so? Because they love. If you love something, then you can take any trouble to achieve it. If you love something, then you have to get it. Whatever may be the obstacles, no obstacle is an obstacle. You get it. There is a story in Indian mythology that one man was madly in love with one girl. And so that girl had gone away to some village. And he could not stay away from her. So he wanted to go to that village. There was a river, and that river was flooded that day. But at the dead of the night, he decided he could not withstand the separation. So he decided to go to her. And it was difficult to cross the river. It was all flood, very strong current. And he found that a piece of wood is floating, so he thought that he can catch that and go. And with that catching it, somehow he crossed the river and went to the other bank. There at night he found that there is her house. And then how to get into the house now? He found that there is a rope hanging. And so he caught the rope and climbed and went inside. Woke her up, and she said, "Oh, why did you take this trouble of coming all the way in such terrible rains? The river is flooded. How could you come? And why your body is smelling so bad?" And he said that, I came to the river and there was a piece of wood. And so I caught the piece of wood and came here. Piece of wood. Then he realized that he was holding a corpse that was dead for quite some time and smelly. So that is what because the smell. And then he said, "But you are so nice, you had kept a rope hanging for me so that I can climb and come." She said, "I did not keep any rope." And they saw it was a big snake that he held and climbed up. Because of love, a person can do anything. If you love, then you do it. So, therefore, if you love God, you will do everything for God. If you don't, then you will find excuses. Excuses will galore then. That why do you not want to do your meditation or spiritual practices? You can tell 100 reasons. That I have lot of work to do, and then I have headache. You can give so many reasons. I don't have time. But if you love something, then you find time for that. It is you automatically will find time. So therefore, love is the most important instrument that we have to get God. If you love something, you get it. So let us learn to love God. And how to learn that? That you don't see God right now, but we see all the people around. And if we serve them if we love them as ourselves, love automatically transforms into service and loving concern. When you love somebody, you serve that somebody automatically. You take care of that person automatically. That love, if suppose your child that you love, if the child is sick, what will happen to that love? That love will automatically prompt you to take care of the child, to serve the child, to be concerned about it. So because of love, that on the practical level, the idea of love gets translated into service, concern and care. So when we love others, what does it mean? That should translate into that care of each other, feeling the sense of that connectedness with each other and serve. And that should happen spontaneously. When we love somebody as we love ourselves. See, with ourselves, we don't have to tell, we don't have to prompt. I was giving this example this afternoon to a nice girl, that suppose that your left hand is hurt, then the right hand doesn't need to be told that, oh, okay, take care of it. It will do it automatically. It doesn't need to be told to do that, because there is that feeling of oneness. That same one being is in left hand as well as in the right hand also. And so right hand, does it feel that, oh look, I have done such great service to the left hand, now left hand should say thanks. No, it is spontaneous, it is without any expectation. It doesn't have any expectation. See, our whole body, how much that sense of oneness brings so much of cooperation in it. The hands don't say, we do all the work and only mouth eats. Why should say that? I will not feed the mouth. I will only keep the food with me. It is all silly. It will not get food itself also. So therefore, this idea of love automatically translates into loving service. So this feeling of God in all, love thy neighbor as thyself, as if it is you in another body, just as it is the same you in this hand and this hand. So the same you in your neighbor also, in everyone. So what will happen by that? The transformation takes place very nicely with this. When you love, then you start feeling that oneness. I and this person, we are one from inside. Outside it is different. This is one body, that is another body. But inside we are one. And extend it to every creature, and then you will gradually feel. It takes time, it takes practice. But if we keep on this practice, the result is sure to come. There is no doubt about it. These sages did not tell lies. They told something that is according to their experience. They have experienced it. So therefore, if we love, we will see that it is, we will see that God in every being. That then we will not have the doubt about God. All doubts will be just cut asunder. And also that will evolve in making our life fulfilled. There will be nothing else required. When I have God in me, what do I require? What else do I require? I don't need anything more. I have got everything that I want because I got God. What else do I want? Everything is in God. So I got everything. if you have $100, then that means you have $1 already. In 100 includes 1. So if you have $100, you have $1 also. So all that is in this world is included in God. You get the highest joy, and that joy is again does not go away. Other joys, for example, the joy of eating candy. How long does it last? As long as the candy is from here to here, then it is gone. And that also is very little and lasts for a short time. But the joy of having God includes all other joys. In one Upanishad, Taittiriya Upanishad, there was a nice thought experiment that let us find out how much is the joy of the illumined. Illumined means the one who has experienced God. So how much is the joy of that person? They speak of that person's joy is big. But how big? We want to measure it. How big? So for measuring you require a unit. So they made a big unit. And this unit that you make depends on how much you want to measure. For example, if you want to measure distance between stars, then you don't use inches. An inch is too small. You'll use the light years, how far the light years they are away, because it is a big distance. The time that the distance that the light travels in 1 year, huge distance. In 1 second, the light travels that 186,000 miles. So in 1 year, it becomes a huge distance. And that is how you count or measure the distance between stars. Now this great joy is to be measured. So a tiny candy joy cannot be the unit. It has to be a big unit. What big unit? Suppose a human being is young and has all the sense organs in full strength. That person has been given all the wealth. This whole earth is given to that person for enjoyment without any problem. No competition. All is yours. Come on. Now the joy of that person. Suppose our Shraddha is given all that. Then that becomes one unit. Shraddha has the whole earth given to her, filled with all wealth, all things that you require, everything is filled in it. And then she has her body also in perfect shape, and all very youthful energy, everything is there. Then that joy of that person is called one human joy. One human joy. That is a maximum that a human person can think of in terms of the joy. Now, it is said that the person who is illumined already has it. 100 times of this joy is called angel's joy, and it is called Gandharvanam. Those who are celestial angels, their joy is 100 times that. Why 100 times? Because the joy depends, the sensation of joy depends on how fine your nerves are. The finer the nerves become, the more becomes the experience of joy. If the nerves are not fine or functionally that strong, then you don't get those sensations. So in those angels, the nerves are finer, so they get more happiness, 100 times more than human beings. Then more than that angels, 100 times more than that is another level of beings. They get 100 times more than that. But Upanishad says, that scripture says in every line, that the illumined has that joy already included in his joy. Like that it goes 7 times. And still they have not reached the end of the measure of the joy of the illumined. How much it is? Then the sages, they kind of wink, put their tongue in cheek and say, well, what you think of joy is really not joy at all. That person's joy is real joy. What you call is the contact between the sense and the sense object. That contact brings a reflection or an illusion of joy. That is why it goes away. That is why it is temporary. And not only that, it brings the reaction of suffering, reaction of misery. Because why do we get the reaction of misery? Because we went to get joy from where it is not. You do not suppose you see a nice apple in a mirror. In a mirror you are seeing the apple, and if you want to go to get it and eat it, what will happen? You go and hit the mirror, go again and again, go and hit the mirror. You will not get the apple, because that apple is really not there. It is seen there, but it is really not there. And therefore, making attempt again and again will make only your hands will be aching, may start bleeding also. So that is what happens to us, that we want to get joy from some object. And we go there, if I get this ice cream I will be very happy. And then, well, the ice cream comes and goes. You don't get the expected joy, that's all. But why so? Because it is not there. If you see the source of joy and get it, if you really have the apple, then you can eat it. But if you are seeing only reflection, you won't get it. See, all joy comes from within. If you see, even when you were feeling that pleasure when you were eating a candy, the joy was not coming from that candy. If you notice it, it was not coming from the candy, it was coming from inside. Had it been from the candy, then 10 candies would be giving you 10 times joy. That doesn't happen. You eat one, maybe two, enough. Because the joy was never in candy. It was inside you. So, you see that when you realize the self, you get the true joy, true happiness. And you don't need anything else then. It is that Upanishad says there that, look, all the other joys that we were talking about, they were the appearances, illusory joys. They were not real joys at all. But this person, the illumined person, has really got the true joy. And therefore now that person's life is fulfilled. That person has seen, experienced that oneness in everything. So, love the neighbor as thyself, as you love yourself. What a great idea, what a sublime idea, as I love myself. Let that love be spread everywhere. And thus, what is seen here will be seen there also. The self is not different at all. We have the same self in everybody. It is therefore that is realized through this practice of love. The more we learn to love our neighbors, means everybody, as ourselves, the more will be the manifestation of this self. One important thing about love is to be noted here. Love and what normally is the carnal attraction that we have here, that gets called as love, but it is really not love. It is a very different thing. In true love, it is giving. In our what we call love in this world, that I love this person or that person, there is lot of expectation. If that expectation is not fulfilled, then the love doesn't remain there. It is not a true love at all, because there are expectations. Secondly, that is again that creates bondage. Bondage means instead of loving each other, true love frees. What passes for love in this world, that binds, that puts us in bondage, that I will love you only if you do this. That is the nature of the love in this world. If you don't do this, enough, no love anymore. Why? Because that is the nature of this what we call love in this world. We get attached to each other instead of becoming free. But the love for God makes us free. Moreover, there is another important thing, no competition. In the worldly love there is competition, trying to please each other. It is not really love. There is something else working in the mind, that I will get this from this person. So therefore the true love transcends all that, and that love can be therefore for God alone or for yourself alone. You love yourself irrespective of whatever you are. Similarly, you will love others also, seeing God in them. If you see God in them, that love will be spontaneous and true love, and that becomes then the way to experience or realize the God in all of us. Once Sri Ramakrishna was telling about the various practices of the devotees of the sect of Vaishnavas, that they practice that loving this God. They practice also the compassion. So when he was telling one of those practices, that for example, worshipping the devotees, respecting everybody, he said that one of the practice is showing compassion to all beings. But he could not even utter the word compassion there. He went into the state of ecstasy and that state of samadhi. From that state of samadhi, when he was coming down, he said, "Oh, who are you to show compassion to others? No, compassion is not the right thing. What is right thing? Serve others by seeing God in them." Compassion means it smacks that, well, I can show or not show. You feel bigger than the one to whom you are showing compassion. You take you stand on a higher pedestal, that I am showing compassion to you. But Sri Ramakrishna says that no, you should not do like that. Who are you to show compassion? It is God who is in everyone. Serve everyone by seeing God in them. And that is a great truth that the Vedanta teaches, that practice this, that when his disciple Swami Vivekananda, he was there listening to this idea, he said, well, what a great illumination. This is the way by which the Vedanta that is practiced in forests, that can be practiced at home. That by this principle you can see that everybody has God in that, and you can worship that God through the service of that God in that body. Serve God. Consider that every person, every being is an image of God. You have so many different images of God. You have many symbols of God. But he says that, look, a human being is an image of God. God resides in that. And so serve that God through this human image. Think of it as the image made of flesh and blood. You have the images made of wood or made of stone, made of metal. Instead of that, this is the image made of flesh and blood. And serve God in that image. If you serve God in and through that, then what will happen? Then you will gradually start feeling that oneness. And there also you will see our desire, our idea of serving the others. We have these two ideas for us. That one is to devote to God. But many feel, what is there to devote in God? What we should do is to serve people. Philanthropy. That let us do good to the world. What is the point in just praying to some God in the heaven? Let us do philanthropy. Let us do good to the world. Now, both these ideas are meaningfully, very nicely put together in this principle, that serve the God in human beings. Serve the people as if they are embodiments of God. Each is really God. In ignorance we think of that as a human being, but really that is God. That is, if you see that you really love God alone, if you say that, well, I love this person. One man was telling that I love my wife so much. That okay, it is very good that you love her so much. Now tell me, what do you love her? Means, do you love her nose? Or do you love her eyes? Or do you love her skin? What do you love? And then naturally he got a little bit confused. What do I love? Well, I love her. Means that transcends the body. And the body is, suppose the body changes over the years, the body changes. It does not remain the same. But does that mean the love goes away? It is not that. The love was for something within that, something that transcended the body. And therefore what is that? That is God. When you see the names and forms are removed, then what is that separates us? We are then really one. If the wave and the ocean, very nice example. The wave and the ocean, where is the difference? The wave has a particular form. And you say that this is that wave. But it is continuously changing. And it is the truth of it is ocean. ocean is really there, that is manifesting in the form of these continuously changing waves. So let us think of all our forms. They are like waves. They rise, grow, start falling, and go back again in the ocean. So what is it real? It is only an appearance like wave. Comes and goes. Ocean alone is real. So we see that the ocean, one ocean is there in all waves. Similarly, one God is in all these different forms. It is only the form that is creating difference. Many examples like that can be given to understand this idea. Another beautiful example is like animal crackers. Do you eat animal crackers? No? Yes, animal crackers. So there you have, say, a giraffe, a dog, a mouse. Now dog is also the same thing as giraffe is, only the form is different there. If you eat, it tastes the same. If you eat giraffe, it doesn't taste different than if you eat mouse. But are you eating a mouse? No, it is the cookie part. That cracker is being eaten. The same dough, different forms. So look at us, we are all different forms. Not different really from inside. Inside it is all one. So, and the inside, that is more important. The inside, that is why you don't eat only the shape. You are eating it for the dough that is inside. That is the important thing. So similarly, we are interested in each other not for the name and form, but because of the God that is in all of us. And that we see in us. We have to learn to see that in everyone. That is, love thy neighbor as thyself. As we do it, we will see automatically that the development takes place. It is a very practical thing. It is not just a theory. If you do it, you will see that you start having more and more feeling of God with you. So let us hope and pray that this great teaching comes to our life. Let it inspire us to love the neighbor as ourselves, to serve others as if they are really the embodiment of God. So this will bring illumination in our life. I am very happy and feel privileged to be able to discuss these wonderful ideas with you. This is for me meditation on these ideas, and as I meditate on them, I feel that I am getting closer to those, and you became the instrument for that. So my thanks to you, my prayers for you, and I conclude with these words. May God bless you all. If you have any questions, I can try to answer them. Yes, Marta?
But you think that the difficulty is that sometimes, maybe all the time, is that we don't really love ourselves. We don't really realize the divinity that is in us. That's why we cannot see in other people.
That is true. It is, and especially that happens because of misunderstanding of the teachings, of despising oneself. In some of the old the scriptures, and that is probably the fault of the translators or interpreters, that it is told that you should despise yourself. So you don't love yourself, and so you cannot love others also. But therefore, we must learn to, as you said, to love ourselves, to have confidence. That means, in practical terms, it means that have self-confidence. It is very important to have this self-confidence. Before, as Swami Vivekananda used to say, that before having faith in God, have faith in yourself. First you have to have faith in yourself. Then you can have faith in God. If you don't have faith in yourself, you can never have faith in God. In fact, your saying that I have faith in God has no meaning if you don't have faith in yourself. So therefore, you have to have faith in yourself. Learn to appreciate yourself as the divine. So, he said, therefore, each soul is potentially divine. Let us think of ourselves as potential divinity. And we are all potential divinities. Divinity is potential. What does it mean? We have to manifest it. That is the goal of life. That we are potentially divine means there is the material in us. There is the propensity. There is the possibility of our becoming divine. Potentially divine. And Swami Vivekananda has given these 4 kind of aphorisms to sum up the whole of the religion. What does he say? Each soul is potentially divine. Each soul. You are divine. Your daughter also is divine. Your neighbor also is divine. Everyone, all souls, everybody is divine, but potentially. And there is that needs to be manifested. That which is so, manifestation of that potential divinity is the goal of life. We were discussing at our lunch table the goal of life. What should be the goal of life? This should be the goal of life. In fact, this can be the only goal in life. There is no other thing in life that can satisfy you completely. Only manifesting this divinity can bring that ultimate satisfaction. So therefore that alone is the goal of life. It is, then how to do it is the third question. That is what is called yoga. You must have heard this word yoga. Yoga means converting the theory into practice. That is what is called yoga. Yoga does not mean only having some postures. That is a small part of it. That doing some exercises and postures, that is called yoga only in a very narrow sense. Yoga means converting what is only a theoretical concept into a practical manifestation. It is a technology. Yoga is therefore science and technology. Science gives you the principles, technology gives you the application of it. So, similarly, yoga is the technology of converting this knowledge that there is the one self in everyone. In all beings, the self is the same. This is knowledge. Now, how do you manifest it? Yoga. That it is, then the yoga gets explained into, say, karma yoga, means directing your actions in that light. Instead of doing the actions with attachment, with desires, convert them into selfless actions. Then that action will become yoga. Do it without attachment, that will be yoga. Similarly, then the bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion or love. What is that? Instead of loving this, and love God who is the reality of all. Then you will be able to love everyone. Please don't mistake me. If love God alone, does it then mean that I should then therefore hate my children or hate my husband or hate my wife? Does that mean? No. You will be able to love everybody much better. If you can love somebody as human beings, how much more you will be able to love when you will see that as divine. So therefore it will enhance your real love, because the selfishness will be reduced, demands will be reduced, and love will have more scope in life. So that is called bhakti yoga, yoga of devotion. Then the third is called the yoga of knowledge, jnana yoga. Discriminate, think, turn your faculty of thinking in this direction. That think what is real, what is permanent, and what is unreal, that is impermanent. And that which is permanent, hold on to that. That which is impermanent, that comes and goes, give up the attachment to that. That when we know that something is not real, we are not attached to that. Suppose Jaime is keeping $100 bill in his pocket. I don't know if he has now, but suppose, you want to take it out? Suppose he has $100 note in his pocket, and he keeps it very carefully, $100. So he doesn't want somebody to take it away, or doesn't want to lose it. Now he goes to buy something, and says that, I want this in the shop, buys something worth $100. He knows that he has $100, so buys something worth $100, and then at the cash counter gives that. That person in the cash counter sees, examines it, says that it is counterfeit. It is a fake note. I am sorry to say, Mr. Jaime, but this is a fake note. This is not real. He gets a shock. What does it? Oh, I thought I have $100. You say it is fake note. Are you sure? Yes, I am sure. Jaime still doesn't believe. Goes to another shop and sees. Because what you think as real, if one person tells you not real, you are not ready to believe. Goes on to another shop. There also the same thing. Another shop, same thing. Then he is convinced that it is a fake note, a counterfeit, not real. When he knows that it is not real, now does he keep it protected? Now does he care for it? He just puts it in the trash. It is gone. So similarly, when we see that which is not real, that is, therefore we lose interest in it. We see that these names and forms to be real, and therefore we are attracted to them. When we know that God alone is real, then the attraction for that goes away. So that is how we have to develop this idea, that yoga, that yoga of knowledge, and then yoga of concentration, that is called Raj Yoga. So each soul is potentially divine. Let us remember this. And then the fourth aphorism, Vivekananda says that all other things that pass for religion, like the particular books, the temples, the rituals, they are good, but as secondary details. They are all secondary details. So this is the important thing, to know that each soul is potentially divine. Remember, I am potentially divine. Let each of us remember, I am potentially divine. and work out to manifest that divinity. So, you have a question, okay.
Related to the concept that every soul is potentially divine, I observe in myself certain blocks with certain types of people. I rate this, the extremes, do you have any words of wisdom on how to...
Well, this is a question that is often asked, that how can I believe each soul is potentially divine when there are such cruel people, those who are such bad people? How can they be having divinity in them? I can understand Jesus or a Buddha, they are divine. But a rapist, somebody like Hitler who killed so many people, cruel people like that, how can they be divine? Well, they also are divine. In saintly people that divinity is more expressed, in the others it is less expressed. It is there even in a rapist, but it is, what is a rapist? Gets terribly attracted towards certain things, and since that it cannot fulfill that person, becomes very cruel, very terribly disoriented because of that the whole understanding becomes different. It is, but that doesn't mean that inside the divinity is not there. See, it is divinity. If we understand it, then we will not be cruel. But we don't understand it, it is covered. And therefore, because it is not seen, you see the all bad people, and you feel then how God can be in them. But God is really in them too. Only it is more covered. Like if you have a diamond in a case, then you can't see the diamond from outside. You may see only a coarse box, and you may wonder why this is $100,000, a small box. It is, but the box is just a throwaway thing maybe, but the cost is that of the diamond. So each of us has that. Even the so-called bad people also have that. And therefore, we all have hope. We all have hope. It is, you see, many of those who became saints, not that they were saints in the beginning. They had very bad life, but they understood and changed themselves. Then they became saints. So, therefore, it is said that every saint had a past. Every saint had a past when that person was not a saint. And therefore every sinner has a future when he or she will not remain a sinner, that will become a saint. It is the appearance that makes difference. It is the potential divinity is in everyone. Whether you see that person as a very bad person or a very good person. Of course, here another question comes. Then how should I deal with somebody who is a very bad person? I know that that person is a criminal tendencies are there, murderous tendencies are there. Now how should I deal with that person? If I look at the potential divinity and go to embrace, then I may be harmed by that. What should I do? Well, you have to have your behavior tuned to the appearance as well as the potential divinity. the appearance is not that of divinity, but the inside that is divine. Therefore Sri Ramakrishna used to tell that a tiger also has a god in it. But that doesn't mean that the worship of the tiger, you don't go too close to do worship of that tiger god. Do it from a distance. Don't go too close. Because that is the form is that of a tiger. So the form, there are cruel people in the world. Why are they cruel? Not that we are not, each of us has defects, but they are the defects in the covering, not in the divinity. And we feel that everybody in the world should be saintly. There is a very nice quote, that passage in Swami Vivekananda's one of the lectures, that he says, we all feel that all the bad people from the world should be removed. Everybody should be very truthful. Everybody should be very cooperative and helpful and nice and all that. Let the world be made like that. Very nice idea, is it not? It is a nice idea. But then you ask a question to yourself. Will I find a place in that world? Will I get a place in that world? Am I that saintly? Am I that good? Am I not do something bad sometimes? Each of us do that bad sometimes. Therefore, Jesus said when they were stoning that so-called sinner lady, that, well, those of you who have never sinned, let them throw the stones first. And nobody could throw the stone because everybody has something or the other. Only we see bad in others. We don't see that much bad in us. And that is again because we love ourselves really. The others are all bad. Others they have problems. Others they are not good people. So let us have that sense of sympathy. That doesn't mean that you should follow bad people or have close relationship with them. Not necessary. But know that there is the potential divinity in them also. And it will manifest. It will manifest. It has to manifest. Now, if not today, tomorrow it will manifest. And you will then not call that person a sinner. There is a great verse in Bhagavad Gita. It is such a beautiful verse. I meditate on that verse a lot. That apichet suduracharo bhajate mam ananya bhag sadhureva samantavyah samyak vyavasito hisah. Even if somebody who is terribly wrongdoer, a person who is involved in all types of sins, if that person becomes a devotee, then what happens now? He says that person should be now considered as a saint and not as a sinner. Why was that person a sinner? Because was not connected to God. When that very person becomes connected to God, now that person becomes saint. And suppose, for example, this glass, this has water. Now, but suppose it had poison. Then what will it be called? Now it is called glass of water. If you have poison in it, it will be called what? Glass of poison. It is nothing to do with glass. It is what is filled in it. It is, and if you wash it nicely, throw the poison, wash it nicely, fill something nice in it, some water, then what will it be called? Then you don't, looking at its past, you don't call it glass of poison, it is glass of water. So similarly, a person filled with ignorance commits all types of sins. It is the ignorance. That is the cause of the sin. That is why what Jesus said when he was being crucified, what does he say? They know not. Exactly, thank you. It is they know not. That ignorance makes us commit sins. And when that ignorance gives way to knowledge, what will happen? What will happen? Then Emily will be the great saint. Now also she is saintly, but when that ignorance goes away completely, there will be that saint manifesting there. So that is how one should look at that. Okay friends, again thank you all, gracias, and have a nice night to you all.